We all want to live the life of our dreams. If we are successful in multiple aspects of our life, like getting our dream job, we can live a high definition, aka HD life. I don't think anyone disagrees with this, but you know what? You do you. I'm not going to judge. But regardless of whether you want to live an HD life or not, there are always going to be obstacles that block us in life. These can be our financial status, mindset, and so on. But in my case, one of them was ADHD, a hidden obstacle that I hadn't found out until about a few months ago. So when I was young, I couldn't speak a word until I was 3 years old. That was a big red flag already. But my parents didn't know about the problems that would arise, so they just left it. Though really, they shouldn't be ignored. But other than that, life was reasonably normal. Not. Everyone agreed that I was academically bright because I was ambitious, motivated, and enthusiastic. But I also was struggling a lot. I had a sad social life with friendships that didn't last for more than a year. I spaced out and didn't listen to teachers sometimes in class. I couldn't focus on anything that I wasn't interested in. I lost things a lot, and my backpack, desk, locker, room, and workspace became organized chaos. But in reality, they became black holes. So when being smart wasn't enough, and expectations started getting higher and higher and higher in high school, that was when I began to suffer. And a few months ago, I visited a psychiatrist with my mom. After an assessment, I got diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It can also be described as ADD, attention deficit disorder, but that's an outdated term because it only covered one type of ADHD. Yes, there's 3 different aspects of ADHD: inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Some people are more inattentive. They can daydream or move slowly, and some people are more hyperactive. They can fidget, interrupt people sometimes, and usually get diagnosed sooner. Most of the time, people with ADHD have a combination of both, aka the combined type. Fun fact, I'm the combined type. So what the doctor said to me was that I needed to take a stimulant medication, and with this diagnosis, maybe I'll get better. The first day I took it, I didn't feel anything except that I ate less. So I said to myself, hey, maybe it's too soon to tell. Maybe I'll just wait a few weeks. And so I waited and waited. Nothing really changed much. I felt like a burnt out failure because I still felt disorganized, unproductive, and stressed all the time. Was I not trying? No, because I worked so hard to improve myself that I didn't even have much time for friends. Therefore, I thought my failure was my fault because people told me to study more, to just work harder, and to not be lazy and unmotivated. Honestly, I felt tired of putting more effort into my life than to see that I was falling further behind. It came to the point where I didn't think life was worth living anymore. At this point, I could have given up on myself, but I didn't. I finally took the next step to see what else could I do besides taking medicine. So I researched how, why, and what to do about my ADHD. And I found what I needed. Sure, there were some sketchy websites out there, but don't worry, there's some good stuff. There's still some good stuff on the web. And as I was researching, I noticed that I couldn't really relate to most of the content, as I found that most of the authors didn't have ADHD. They're called neurotypical people, aka people who have typical developmental, intellectual, and cognitive abilities. Instead, neurodiverse people wrote most of the information I found that was super helpful. People with ADHD, autism, or other developmental differences. And some examples I found out, definitely for you can check out with these, are ADD2 magazine and How to ADHD on YouTube. I also noticed that most information written by neurotypical people gave technical cookie cutter advice. So to kind of sum it up, I saw many myths about ADHD where it seems like you can't live successfully and you have to change yourself to fit into society. You cannot be yourself and live an HD life. So with a lifetime of experience with ADHD and a couple of months of doing a research marathon to find more information, here are some of my tips on how you can live the life you always wanted with ADHD. So first of all, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder where the brain works differently. And sometimes the symptoms can never go away. It's not the result of bad parenting or lack of discipline. People with ADHD are not lazy, rude, or unmotivated. We just see things differently, and our thoughts, feelings, and actions are not typically accepted because society was built around neurotypical people who are normal. Girls, adults, and even gifted people have ADHD. It's possible for them too. Second, remember the 3 aspects that I mentioned earlier? They don't sound like problems, right? Like I got 99 problems, but 3 of them are not inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Psst, spoiler alert, they're huge problems. People with ADHD are more likely to struggle with addiction, get into car accidents, get fired from a job, have unstable relationships, and much more. This is sometimes because we lack the stimulation our brain needs to function correctly. Third, ADHD is on a spectrum. Everyone can experience some symptoms of ADHD, like forgetting keys or spacing out. However, the diagnosis is based on how many symptoms within hyperactivity, inattention, and impulsivity you have, how significant the symptoms are, how long you had those symptoms, and how those symptoms impacted your life. It's like how you can be anxious but not have an anxiety disorder. So you can get distracted, but that doesn't mean you have ADHD. Fourth, having ADHD does not mean we can't pay attention at all. This sounds so confusing, but we can also focus to the point where it's too much and we even neglect self-care and time. So we call this hyperfocusing. Instead, we have trouble controlling when to pay attention. To kind of put this in a metaphor, it's like someone else controlling what you can focus on. This means we sometimes can't focus at all and can even have trouble switching between tasks. And it can be frustrating when we concentrate and then we try, but we just can't. Fifth, ADHD affects more than our focus. It actually affects everything in our brain. And I'm emphasizing that it affects our executive functioning, like things such as planning, studying, organizing, perseverance, and regulating emotions. Now you may be thinking, okay, we have some myths busted, but how exactly can someone be successful with ADHD? I wish we could just have a pill that magically makes us successful in an instant, but sadly, it doesn't exist. But hey, there are other options, even ones that don't need medicine. Pills can be important for ADHD, but to be honest, taking drugs will not teach you the habits and the skills you need to succeed. Things such as exercise, meditation, coaching, and cognitive behavioral therapy to challenge your behaviors and to kind of structure your life can significantly impact your life. Another tip for me that was a lifesaver was definitely getting external helpers to keep track of things. Things like timers, study notes, a calendar, and some to-do lists to keep me from being overwhelmed by my poor working memory. And right now, it can feel hopeless if you have ADHD, but you're not alone. You're among millions of people across the globe who have ADHD. If you don't have it, chances are someone you know has it. But to those with ADHD, you need to stop comparing yourself to neurotypical brains or people without ADHD because you will feel insecure about yourself. Comparing yourself to someone else who has a brain that's built differently is irrelevant. Also, ADHD is not all about weaknesses. It has its strengths. When you keep these thoughts in mind, you can start appreciating and recognizing your strengths in yourself. and our neurodiverse brains have some superpowers. We can be energetic, spontaneous, generous, and funny. We are also more likely to become entrepreneurs and get into hyper-focus when you're passionate about something. And while we work, we can think outside the box and deal with some urgent and challenging tasks. So with our strengths as an ADHD person, we can utilize them to their fullest potential and become successful. And that's how I embarked my personal development journey to become the person I am today. But wait, I need to tell you something. I forgot how to mention and how to reach that potential. So let me go over the steps with you. Step 1 is to find out how you and your brain works with yourself and also with others. Step 2 is that you don't have to adapt to neurotypical expectations, but you can adapt your lifestyle around how you work to find your unique formula of success. If you follow a neurotypical way of living, you have a higher chance of failing. Step 3 is to keep on learning and improving to face challenges after discovering the setbacks you have with ADHD. When you looked beyond the myths, the stereotypes, and assumptions people have about ADHD, you will genuinely understand ADHD. We're not just hyperactive and inattentive. We lack the stimulation that our brain needs. We are not lazy or unmotivated. We have an executive function deficit that always doesn't want to cooperate with us. And our brain can't be controlled all the time. Society was built for neurotypical people, and people with ADHD are not made for those expectations. The consequence is that people with ADHD can often feel like they're defects. What I want to say to you instead is to embrace your ADHD brain and shout out to the world that you are not dumb or bizarre. You are not a failure or defect. You are unique, extraordinary, and full of potential. And with that new level of understanding, live that ADHD life with ADHD and help someone with ADHD live their ADHD life. Thank you.